The morning the baby disappeared, the city of Albany woke up like it always did, with the sound of kettles boiling on charcoal stoves, bike horns screaming through narrow streets, and tired mothers shouting at children who dragged their feet on the way to school. But for Amara, the morning arrived like a curse. It came with silence where her baby's breathing should have been, with cold emptiness where warm weight once lay against her chest. She woke with milk soaking through her blouse, her body still believing in a child that no longer lay beside her. For a long moment she did not move. Her small apartment in the back of Brookside Market smelled of old wood, palm oil, and damp laundry. The cracked ceiling fan still turned lazily above her. A rooster crowed somewhere behind the building. Life was continuing. But her world had stopped. Amara slowly stretched her arm toward the bundle of cloth beside her, the same blue wrapper she used to swaddle her son every night. Her fingers closed on emptiness. Her heart skipped. Slowly, fear crept like ice through her spine. "Baba," she whispered. No answer. She sat up sharply, scanning the room with wild eyes. The wooden crib by the wall was empty. The tiny mosquito net hung open as if someone had quietly lifted it in the night. Her breath stumbled out of her chest. "Baba!" she cried louder, her voice breaking. She jumped from the mattress, stumbling across the room barefoot, throwing aside cloth, lifting baskets, opening the door to the small bathroom. Nothing. No cry. No movement. No warmth. Then she screamed. Her scream tore through the compound like a blade. Neighbors ran from their rooms, half-dressed, fear written on sleepy faces. "My baby! My baby is gone!" Amara cried, collapsing to her knees at the doorway. Mama Doyen, the elderly woman who sold beans outside the compound, grabbed her shoulders. "Gone how? Where did you see him last?" "He was here. He slept here. I fed him before midnight." Amara's voice shook so badly her teeth chattered. Men rushed to the street. Some searched the alleyways. Others checked nearby houses. The news moved faster than fire. By sunrise, the entire market knew. A baby had vanished. By noon, the police had come, their questions sharp and cold. They looked around the room, wrote in small notebooks, exchanged looks that made Amara tremble. "Madam, did you leave the door unlocked?" She nodded weakly. "Like always. No one bothered locking doors here at night." "Not really. Do you have enemies?" Enemies. The word felt heavy. She thought of her late husband, Kofi. She thought of the fights. The whispered threats. The day he never returned from work 3 months ago. Her chest tightened. "I don't know," she whispered. By evening, the market swallowed its sympathy. Business resumed. People returned to their lives. But Amara remained on the cold floor, wrapped in grief like a funeral cloth. That night, she cried until no sound came out. And when her tears dried, guilt took over. She blamed herself for sleeping. She blamed herself for being poor. She blamed herself for trusting too easily. She blamed the dead. By the third day, whispers began. Maybe she sold the baby. She was always struggling. Her husband's family never liked her. The child looks too light. Maybe it wasn't his. The words pierced sharper than knives. On the 5th day, the police reduced their visits. On the 7th, they stopped coming altogether. Hope weakened. Amara stopped eating. By the 2nd week, she no longer left her room. Her bones grew sharper under her skin. Her hair lost its shine. Her eyes looked like broken glass. At night she spoke to the walls as if they were her baby. "I'm here, Baba. I'm here." Sometimes she laughed softly like she was holding him again. Sometimes she screamed. Across town, far from the noise of the market, far from concrete and shouting taxis, an old man walked along a dirt road with slow, careful steps. His name was Sadiq. People called him Mad Old Sadiq because he talked to himself and avoided crowds. His clothes were always too large, his sandals worn thin, his beard white and wild like dry grass. But what people did not know was that Sadiq saw things other people no longer noticed. That morning, Beside a polluted stream near the edge of town, he heard a sound that did not belong to frogs or birds. A baby's whimper. He froze. Slowly, with trembling hands, he pushed aside tall weeds. And there, wrapped in dirty cloth, lay a tiny boy, weak, dehydrated, but alive. Sadiq dropped to his knees. "Oh my God!" he whispered. He scooped the child into his arms as if the baby were made of air. The boy cried softly, a hoarse sound, too tired to fight. Sadiq pressed the baby to his chest and felt the small heart beating like a frightened drum. "Who did this to you?" he murmured. He did not take the baby to the police. He did not take the baby to the hospital. Instead, he turned his steps toward the deepest part of the old village beyond the highway, where forgotten people lived and old secrets slept. Back in Brookside Market, Amara dreamed her baby was crying underwater. She woke screaming. By the 10th day, she walked to the river at dawn. Her feet moved as if guided by invisible hands. Her wrapper was tied loosely. Her eyes were empty. Mama Doyen followed her quietly. When Amara reached the water's edge, she looked down into the moving brown current. "Maybe he's calling me from there," she whispered. Mama Doyen pulled her back sharply. "You will not become another loss." That was the day Amara collapsed. When she woke again, she was in Mama Doyen's room, surrounded by women praying over her. But Faith felt far away. On the 14th night after the disappearance, a knock came at the compound gate long after midnight. Not a normal knock. Slow. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps again. The compound gate creaked open. Mama Doyen stepped out with a lantern in her shaking hand. The light fell on the thin figure of an old man holding a bundled cloth to his chest. "I am looking for the mother of this child," Sadiq said quietly. Mama Doyen's lantern shook so hard it almost fell. "The child that disappeared," she whispered. Sadiq nodded. Within seconds, Amara was dragged from her room like a ghost pulled from the grave. When she saw the old man, her first reaction was rage. "You came to mock me," she screamed. "You people enjoy seeing suffering." Sadiq knelt slowly and opened the cloth. The baby whimpered. Amara's breath left her body. Her world spun. The room collapsed inward. Then she fell. Neighbors rushed forward as she screamed, crawled, touched the baby's foot, his hand, his face, over and over again like she was confirming reality through pain. "My son, my son, my son." She sobbed directly onto his chest. The baby cried louder now, alive, present. The impossible had happened. But before joy could settle completely in the air, Sadiq spoke again. "This child was left by the stream," he said. "Someone wanted him dead." Silence swallowed the room. Amara's sobs turned into quiet shaking. "Why?" she whispered. Sadiq reached into the torn pocket of his shirt and slowly pulled out a folded, water-stained letter. "This was tied to the cloth," he said. "It was written by a man who knew you." Amara stared at the paper. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The handwriting struck her like lightning. It was Kofi's, her dead husband. The room blurred as she read. "If you are reading this, I am already gone. I did not die by accident. I was betrayed by those who ate at my table and smiled at my face. They want my son because of what I discovered. Trust no one from my blood. Run if you must. And forgive me for the danger my truth has placed on you. I loved you with my dying breath." Amara screamed. Not in grief, but in fury. The elders exchanged fearful looks. Mama Doyen whispered, "Betrayed by his blood. May God intervene." Her hands tightened around the letter with new understanding. Her baby had not been stolen by strangers. He had been hunted, and the truth her husband died for was still alive. In her arms. The joy that followed the return of Amara's child did not last the night. It only stayed long enough for her arms to ache from holding him too tightly, long enough for the neighbors to whisper prayers of thanksgiving, long enough for tears of happiness to mix with tears of shock. By morning, fear had crept back into her heart, crawling alongside the terrifying words from her husband's letter. They want my son because of what I discovered. That sentence followed her like a shadow. She barely slept. Every sound outside the compound made her sit up and clutch the baby harder to her chest. Even when Baba finally slept, milk-drunk and exhausted, her eyes stayed wide open in the dark. When dawn came, pale and dusty, Mama Doyen sat beside her with a bowl of warm pap. "You must eat," the old woman said gently. "Fear cannot stand when the body is strong." Amara shook her head slowly. "They will come back." Mama Doyen lowered her voice. "Who?" "My husband's people," Amara whispered. "His brothers. His uncle. They always hated me. They said I bewitched him. They said the child was not his." Mama Doyen's lips tightened. Men who desire what is not theirs always speak evil to cover greed. When Sadiq was asked where exactly he found the baby, he hesitated. His eyes shifted as if measuring danger. "Close to the old war stream," he said. "Not far from the abandoned cocoa sheds." A ripple passed through the elders who had gathered. "That place is controlled by Kofi's elder brother," one man murmured. "Abdul's men pass through there often." Amara's stomach turned to ice. Abdul. Her husband's blood. Her husband's enemy. 2 hours later, a black SUV pulled into Brookside Market, sending dust and fear in equal measure. People scattered instinctively. Power always announced itself loudly. Abdul stepped out dressed in clean white kaftan, dark glasses hiding his eyes, gold ring on his finger shining like accusation. Behind him were 2 men built like walls. Amara watched from Papa Doyen's doorway, her baby hidden tightly beneath her wrapper. Abdul walked slowly, confidently, like a man who owned the ground under his feet. His voice rose over the murmurs of the market. "I am looking for my brother's widow," he said. "I heard strange stories last night." People stepped aside. Amara's knees trembled, but she did not run. She stepped out slowly. "I am here." A thin smile cut across Abdul's face. Not warmth. Calculation. "So the rumors are true," he said softly. "The child returned from the dead." He leaned closer. "May I see my nephew?" Amara's arms wrapped tighter around Baba. "No." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Abdul's smile vanished. "You will not deny me." She lifted her chin, her voice shaking but strong. "You already denied my husband his life." For a split second, the air froze. Then Abdul laughed too loudly. "Grief has confused you." Mama Doyen stepped forward. "This woman is under protection of this compound." Abdul's eyes hardened. "Old woman, move aside." Amara spoke again. "Why was my child found in a place controlled by your men?" The question cut deep. Abdul's jaw tightened. "You accuse without proof." Sadiq cleared his throat softly from the back of the crowd. "The baby was found tied with rope made from cocoa sacks. Those sacks bear your estate's mark." The air turned sharp. Abdul turned slowly toward the old man. "You should be careful where you bury your mouth." Sadiq met his stare. "I already buried fear the day you killed your brother." The market erupted in gasps. Abdul signaled sharply to his men. But before anything could happen, police sirens cut through the tension. Someone had already called them. Abdul's men stepped back. "This is not finished," Abdul said coldly before climbing back into the SUV. "Blood always returns to blood." When the dust settled, Amara sank to the ground. Her strength drained like water from broken clay. That night, the elders met in secret. Mama Doyen sat beside Sadiq, her face tight. "This thing is deeper than we thought," she said. Sadiq nodded. "Kofi discovered something. Something powerful enough for his own blood to turn murderer." Amara listened quietly from the corner, rocking Baba gently. "What did my husband uncover?" she asked. Sadiq hesitated, then spoke. Illegal land sales. Government contracts. Fake ownership papers. Your husband tried to expose his brother's empire built on stolen village land. The truth came like thunder. Amara remembered the late nights Kofi stayed awake whispering into borrowed phones. The secret meetings he never explained. The sudden tension in his shoulders. They killed him because he refused to stay silent, Mama Doyen said. Amara closed her eyes. He died for truth. And now they want your son, Sadiq added, to erase the last proof that Kofi lived and left behind vengeance. That night, Amara wept not as a helpless widow, but as a woman whose blood had been awakened. Revenge began to breathe inside her. In the weeks that followed, fear and quiet resistance lived side by side. Amara stopped staying indoors. She began visiting the old village leaders who once trusted her husband. She brought kola nuts and palm wine. She listened more than she spoke. Slowly, truth gathered around her like silent soldiers. Abdul had sold ancestral land to foreign developers using forged signatures. Kofi had recorded everything. The evidence was missing. And only one person might know where it was hidden: Kofi's younger sister, Safiya. Safiya had disappeared days after Kofi's death. Some said she ran away in fear. Others said Abdul buried her silence too. Amara refused to believe she was dead. Late one evening, a girl appeared at Mama Doyen's doorway. Barefoot. Dirty. Shaking. It was Safiya. She collapsed at Amara's feet. "They will kill my nephew," she cried. "Just as they killed my brother." Safiya revealed everything. She had helped Kofi hide the recordings inside an old family shrine in the abandoned village. Abdul was searching for it desperately. Safiya had been hiding between towns, surviving on kindness and fear. Amara's hands shook as she listened. "You must leave the city," Safiya whispered. "Tonight." But Amara shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "For months I ran from pain. Now pain will run from me." Across town, Abdul sat in his mansion, listening as his spies reported what they had seen. "The old man still moves freely," one said. "The widow is gathering elders," said another. Abdul's glass shattered in his hand. "So grief has turned into courage," he hissed. "Then we answer courage with fire." That night, Brookside Market went dark. Electric poles fell. Gunshots split the sky. Men in black stormed the compound. But Amara was no longer there. With Baba strapped to her back and Safiya beside her, she was already on the dirt road toward the old village shrine, carrying not just a child, but truth, vengeance, and the echo of a dead man's warning. And behind them, the dogs of betrayal were unleashed. The night swallowed Amara, Safiya, and the sleeping child as they slipped beyond the last line of street lamps. The city sounds faded behind them: car horns, shouting vendors, generators coughing smoke into the dark. Ahead was only the narrow red dirt road that curled toward the old village like a secret remembered only by the brave and the desperate. The moon hung low, dim and uncertain, as if even the sky feared what waited in that direction. Baba slept on Amara's back, his tiny body pressed warm against her spine. With every step she took, she whispered silent promises into the night. "I will not let them take you again. Even if blood must answer blood." Safiya walked beside her, wrapping her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. Fear had carved deep lines into her young face, but beneath it burned something stronger, anger sharpened by loss. "They will track us," Safiya said under her breath. "Abdul never stops hunting once he chooses a target." "He already lost his surprise," Amara replied. "Now he will lose more." Behind them, Sadiq and two village youths followed at a distance, armed with nothing but machetes and stubborn faith. The old man's steps were slow but steady. He had walked this road once in his younger years when the land still sang with crops and laughter, before greed cut deep wounds into the soil. By dawn, they reached the cracked edge of the abandoned village. The houses stood like broken teeth against the dull pink sky. Roofs sagged. Doorways yawned empty. Only the wind moved freely here now, carrying the scent of dust and forgotten prayers. At the center of the village stood the old shrine. It was built from mud and white-painted stones, layered with decades of offerings, cowrie shells, feathers, rusted coins, palm fronds tied with red thread. Once it had been the spiritual heart of the land. Now it waited like a sealed mouth, heavy with secrets. Sophia fell to her knees when she saw it. "This is where he hid it," she whispered. Kofi said if truth ever needed a home, it would return to the ancestors. Amara's heart pounded. Sadiq stepped forward, his weathered hands trembling as he pushed aside the hanging cloth at the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with ash and old incense. The early sunlight slipped through cracks in the walls, laying pale stripes across broken clay pots and carvings of forgotten gods. At the far wall, half buried beneath rubble, stood a wooden carving of a woman holding a child. Sophia moved quickly to it. Her fingers searched behind the carving's base. Then she froze. "It's still here," she breathed. She pulled out a small metal case wrapped in oilcloth. Amara's breath caught in her throat. The past, the truth, the reason her husband died, all of it weighed less than a loaf of bread in Sophia's shaking hands. Inside the case were memory cards, 2 small recording devices, and handwritten notes in Kofi's precise script. Sophia sobbed openly now. "He knew," she whispered. "He documented everything." Amara held the case as if it could burn her. Power felt strange in her hands. Dangerous. Heavy. But before relief could settle, the sound of engines shattered the morning silence. 3 vehicles tore through the village entrance, throwing up dust like war drums. Abdul had arrived. Gunmen spilled from the trucks like ants from a broken hill. Their eyes were hard. Their fingers were already resting on triggers. Amara turned her back to the shrine and stepped forward, Baba crying softly at the sudden noise. "You came faster than expected," she said. Abdul walked slowly toward her, his white kaftan already stained with red dust. His smile was gone now. Only calculation lived on his face. "You carry what belongs to me," he said. Amara laughed bitterly. "You mean what you murdered for?" His eyes flicked to the child on her back. "You still stand because I allowed mercy. Do not confuse my patience for weakness." Sophia stepped beside Amara. "You killed our brother." Abdul's voice dropped. "I protected legacy." "You destroyed family," Sophia shot back. Sadiq raised his machete slightly. "You sold sacred ground to criminals. Your legacy stinks of blood." At Abdul's signal, guns lifted. The village youth stepped forward without hesitation. Death stood balanced on breath. Amara's pulse thundered in her ears. And then she did the one thing Abdul never expected. She dropped the metal case into the open dust between them. "You want it," she said. "Take it." The gunman hesitated. Abdul frowned. "What trick is this?" "No trick," she said softly. "Truth is louder when spoken before witnesses." From the tree-line, figures began to emerge. Village elders. Farmers. Women with babies tied to their backs. Men holding hoes and machetes. They had been following quietly since dawn. Sophia had sent word during the night. Abdul turned slowly. For the first time, uncertainty crept into his eyes. Amara raised her voice so it would carry across the gathering crowd. "My husband Kofi uncovered the theft of our ancestral land. He recorded everything. Names. Prices. Foreign buyers. Bribes. Bank transfers." She pointed at Abdul. "This man killed his own brother to protect stolen wealth. He tried to kill my child to erase the last living proof of Kofi's truth." A murmur rose like thunder through the people. Abdul laughed sharply. "She is mad with grief." Sadiq reached down, lifted one device from the dust, and pressed play. Kofi's voice poured into the air like a ghost returned to life. Abdul's voice followed it. Their conspiracy stood naked before the living. The crowd erupted. Shouts of rage. Cries of betrayal. Old men wept openly. Abdul's gunman shifted nervously. Power was no longer clean here. It was drowning in witnesses. Amara's voice broke as she spoke again. He died believing truth would grow roots even in blood-soaked soil. Silence struck hard. Then Abdul moved. Too fast. A gunshot shattered the air. Sophia fell to the ground. Her blood spread into the dust like crushed flowers. Sophia! Amara screamed. Chaos exploded. Gunfire tore through the village. People fled, fell, scattered. Sadiq swung his machete, dropping one of the gunmen. Amara ran toward her sister-in-law, dragging Baba free from her back and pushing him into Sadiq's arms. "Protect him!" she cried. Another shot ripped past her ear. Sophia's eyes opened weakly. "Do not let him erase my brother twice," she whispered before blood filled her mouth. Her hand went still. Something inside Amara shattered. All grief drained out. Only fire remained. She rose slowly from the dust and turned toward Abdul. He stood among smoke and screaming, shouting orders at men who were now losing control. His world was collapsing with every second of exposed truth. Her voice cut through the chaos like iron. "You killed the wrong man's wife," she said. She picked up a fallen machete. The villagers surged forward, rage now fully awake. Abdul fired wildly, panic cracking through his control. One of his own men turned against him. Another fled. Amara charged. He saw her too late. They collided like fate finally catching its breath. The machete struck his arm. His gun dropped into the dust. He staggered back, clutching blood. "You think the world will honor you for this?" he hissed. "No," she said. "But my son will live free of your shadow." She drove him backward toward the shrine wall where truth had waited for justice. Before she could strike again, police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had finally called authority that could no longer ignore the fire. Abdul looked around in wild desperation. He turned and ran. Amara pursued despite the shouting behind her, despite the pain in her chest, despite the tears blinding her. He slipped through the ruins like a hunted animal. She followed, through broken huts, across shattered wells, until the ground vanished beneath him. Abdul's foot missed the edge of the old quarry pit. His scream barely finished before the earth swallowed him. Silence returned like a tidal breath. The crowd gathered slowly at the edge. No one spoke. Only the wind answered. Behind them, Baba cried in Sadiq's arms. And in that cry lived both sorrow and survival. The dust had not yet settled when the sirens reached the broken heart of the old village. People stood frozen around the quarry's edge, staring into the dark mouth that had swallowed Abdul whole. Some whispered prayers. Some spat into the pit with hatred thick on their tongues. For years, fear had walked faster than justice. Now justice had outrun fear. Amara stood at the edge longer than the others. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, burning breaths. Her hands were still stained with dust and blood that was no longer warm. She felt no victory, only a long, aching tiredness that ran deep into her bones. Behind her, Sadiq rocked Baba gently. The child's cries softened into tired hiccups. Life, so fragile, kept insisting on continuing. Sophia's body lay wrapped in white cloth near the shrine. The women had cleaned her face gently, as though she were only sleeping. Palm leaves were already laid around her in mourning. The wind carried the scent of incense and gunpowder together, as though blessing and curse were fighting for space in the air. When the police arrived, they found evidence scattered like fallen truth in the dust, recording devices, memory cards, witnesses shaking with fury and courage. No amount of money could silence this many mouths. Amara handed over the metal case without hesitation. For the first time since Kofi's death, she felt she was no longer carrying a weight alone. That night, no one slept in the village. Sophia was buried before dawn as tradition demanded. Women wailed rhythmically, grief tied into sound. Men poured libation into the earth. Amara knelt by the grave with Baba resting against her chest. "Sister," she whispered, "your brother's truth now has roots." She pressed her son's tiny hand gently to the fresh soil. "This is the blood that remains." When the sun rose, it rose on a different land. Across the city, Abdul's properties were sealed. His accounts frozen. His partners exposed. The story traveled faster than morning. People who had once bowed now cursed his name openly. The powerful learned again that power collapses when light grows teeth. Days passed in a strange quiet. Brookside Market reopened slowly. The fish sellers returned first. Then the vegetable women. Then the men who loaded sacks with strength borrowed from hunger. Mama Doyen's bean stall filled with customers again, but now Amara sat beside her, Baba tied tightly on her back like a sacred promise. Sadiq remained in the compound. Someone offered him a room. Someone else offered him clothes. Another offered food. He refused most things gently. "I only stayed long enough to return what was stolen," he said one evening. "From now on, the child belongs to tomorrow." Amara held his hands softly. "You gave me back my son and my life," she said. "You will never be a stranger in his story." The old man smiled with eyes full of sunset. "Then my bones can rest easy one day." Kofi's name was cleared. His voice now lived in courtrooms, in newspapers, in whispered gratitude from men who had once been afraid to speak. The village elders formally reclaimed the stolen land. The foreign developers vanished quietly into legal shadows. Justice did not roar forever. It simply stayed. But healing was not as quick. Some nights, Amara still woke up reaching for a baby that was already in her arms. Some days, she still heard Kofi's footsteps in the sound of rain. Grief did not leave with the enemy. It stayed like a quiet scar that never fully faded. One afternoon months later, Amara stood at the edge of the old village again, this time with Baba on her hip. Green shoots were beginning to push through the dust where blood had soaked the earth. Women planted cassava nearby. Children chased one another between half-rebuilt huts. Sadiq chuckled softly beside her. The land forgives quicker than humans. Amara touched the soil gently with her bare foot. "Then I will learn from the land." She rebuilt slowly. With money from compensation and help from the market women, she opened a small provision shop. Nothing fancy. Just rice, oil, soap, notebooks for school children, candles for nights when power failed. But it gave her dignity. It gave her movement. It gave her reason beyond survival. Baba grew strong. He learned to walk on uneven ground like a stubborn king. He laughed freely, untouched by the darkness that once hunted him. People in the market called him Son of Fire, because even when he cried, his voice carried life instead of fear. One evening as the sky turned orange and purple, Mama Doyen whispered to Amara, "There is a man who has been coming often. He pretends to buy everything in small portions." Amara looked up from weighing rice. Across the road stood a quiet man in dusty work clothes, holding building tools. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly, embarrassed. His name was Idris. A carpenter. Widowed like her. Broken in different places. At first they spoke little. Then slowly. Then gently. Pain speaks its own language between people who understand its grammar. He never replaced Kofi. He did not try. He simply stood beside Amara in silence when storms returned. He held Baba when Amara's arms ached. He laughed at nothing and everything with equal honesty. Love did not arrive as lightning again. It arrived as steady light. 1 year after Sophia's burial, a new house stood near the reclaimed land. Modest. Strong. Built with hands that believed in tomorrow. Amara walked through the doorway carrying Baba as drums echoed from the village. Women danced. Elders prayed. Children scattered petals across the ground. She paused at the threshold. For a long time, she had lived between death and breath. Now she stepped fully into breath. She lifted her son into the air. "This is the child they tried to erase," she said. "This is the truth that refused to die." The crowd roared. Across all that sound, Amara felt something finally lay down inside her heart. Not grief, but peace. That night, as Baba slept wrapped in clean cloth, Amara took out Kofi's final letter one last time. She read it without trembling. "I kept you alive," she whispered into the darkness. "Now we live forward." Outside, crickets sang. Inside, a mother's heart finally rested.